Death comes for us all in the end, but usually not in the brutal and bizarre ways that have befallen the various characters of the DC universe. And thank God for that. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today we are taking a second look at the top 10 worst ways to die in DC Comics. Let's dive in. Number 10. Reverse Flash Brain Scramble. Reverse Flash is one of the most brutal villains in the DC universe, with his unhinged psychopathy prompting him to end people's lives in incredibly disturbing ways, sometimes going back in time to prevent people from ever having even been born, and other times using his incredible speed to turn himself into a lethal weapon. In the Flash TV show, we've seen him vibrate his hand and use it to stop people's hearts, but in the classic comics, he used a similar but slightly different method on the Flash's wife. Over the course of their many battles, the hatred between Reverse Flash and the Flash grew exponentially. But while this was occurring, Reverse Flash was also falling in love with Barry's wife, Iris. He came into their home when Barry was away and proposed to Iris, who said no, because she loved her husband, and also because Reverse Flash is a crazy psycho. Reverse Flash got his revenge by sneaking into a costume party where everyone was dressed as superheroes, and he murdered Iris, who was dressed as Batgirl, by vibrating his hand so that it could pass through her skull and scramble her brain. There are certainly more painful ways to go, but the speed of this death is what makes it so bad. One moment you're at a party with your whole life ahead of you, and the next your brain has been torn apart at super speed and you're just gone. Number 9. Jason Todd's death. Jason Todd has had a pretty rough life. He was an orphan living on the streets before one fateful day he attempted to steal the tires off of the Batmobile in Crime Alley. Batman caught him in the act and decided that the best way to help the boy handle his rage was to give him an outlet, training him to be the second Robin after Dick Grayson left to become Nightwing. Things were looking up. Jason eventually discovered that his birth mother was still alive and set out to find her. He eventually found Dr. Sheila Haywood working in a refugee camp in Iran, but discovered that she was being blackmailed by the Joker into letting him steal important supplies. He offered to help his mother, revealing that he was the Boy Wonder, and she led him to a warehouse. Once there, Jason realized that his mother had led him into a trap as she was embezzling hospital funds and felt that if Robin was allowed to live, her operation would be at risk. She turned him over to the Joker, who beat him nearly to death with a crowbar and then left him in the building, which was rigged to explode. So, Jason found his real mother, was almost immediately betrayed by her, beaten up by a homicidal clown, and then blown up. He eventually returned from the dead, but that doesn't change the fact that this was a rough way to go. Number 8. Gentleman Ghost's Unending Torment. Jim Craddock was a highwayman in the 1800s who came to America from England and began being known as Gentleman Jim. He crossed paths with the famous gunslingers Nighthawk and Cinnamon, and although Jim was a criminal, Nighthawk mistakenly believed that he had committed a crime against his wife. As a result, Nighthawk executed Jim in cold blood. Jim came back as a ghost, doomed to wander the earth until he could get his revenge and end the lives of his executioners. Unfortunately for the Gentleman Ghost, his executioners are one of the many reincarnations of Hawkman and Hawkgirl, who are always reborn anew whenever they die. Therefore, there is no way for Gentleman Ghost to fulfill his curse, and he is doomed to never enter the afterlife, having been a ghost for hundreds of years. Now, getting executed for a crime you didn't do is bad enough. Becoming a ghost who can't move on to the next life until he has revenge is worse. But finding out that the people you have to get revenge against are unable to stay dead, therefore making your entire curse unfulfillable, is a whole other level of awful. Number 7. Infected by the Carrier. Appearing in the Batman Journey into Night miniseries from 2005, the Carrier is a villain who was infected with a deadly disease while searching for treasure in a cave. He survived, but as a result, he became deadly to anyone who so much as breathed the same air as him. Anyone who came into contact with him would begin going through painful contractions as they struggled to breathe and began forming large infected pustules and foaming green gunk out of their mouths. Carrier eventually discovered that he could prevent this by wearing a gas mask with reversed filters, and set upon a quest for revenge against the man who sold him the bogus treasure map. Huge amounts of people died as a result of Carrier coming to Gotham, and the speed at which they were infected, symptomatic, and finally dead was a horrifying way for anyone unfortunate to cross paths with the Carrier to go. Number 6. Death by Rorschach. The characters featured in Alan Moore's Watchmen are extremely brutal with their enemies, with one of the most aggressive of the vigilantes being Walter Kovacs, aka Rorschach. Rorschach is known for ending the lives of his enemies in increasingly brutal ways. In the book, we are told one enemy got dropped down an elevator shaft. In a flashback, we see him handcuff a man in a burning house, giving him a hacksaw so he would spend his last moments trying to remove his own hand. And in issue 8, Rorschach electrocutes a man and drowns another with a toilet. I think the most painful method that we see the character use in the story is in issue number 6, when he is in prison. One of the other prisoners approaches him in the cafeteria line, tries to use a shiv against the imprisoned vigilante. Rorschach responds by grabbing a tray of boiling oil and throwing it in the prisoner's face. The man is horrifically burned as Rorschach is dragged away, reminding the various prisoners that he isn't locked up with them, they're locked up with him. The burned man spends days in the prison hospital in excruciating pain before he finally passes away from his injuries. Number 5. Abbatoir's family drama. Abbatoir was a Gotham villain who believed that by ending the lives of his family members, he could absorb their life forces and become immortal. He went about destroying his family tree, but was frequently thwarted by Batman. During the Nightfall arc, where Bruce Wayne was out of commission due to a broken spine, and Jean-Paul Valley was the new Batman, Abbatoir went after the last living member of his family, Graham Etchison. He put Graham in an elaborate death trap designed to cause Graham as much pain as possible before his death. He put Graham on a bed of nails with a special rig set up that would drop a weight on him every hour or so. With every new weight, Graham would sink deeper into the nails until he would eventually die after several hours. The new Batman went after Abbatoir, but was more concerned with punishing evil than he was with protecting innocent lives, and let the villain fall into a vat of molten steel. As a result, Abbatoir was unable to lead Jean-Paul to Graham, and he died a slow and painful death. Number 4. Mr. Hyde plays Hyde the Jekyll with the Invisible Man. Another Alan Moore series known for its dark themes and extreme violence is The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. In it, characters from classic literature come together to form a team. One of the members of the team is Holly Griffin, otherwise known as the Invisible Man. He is a twisted monster of a man who uses his abilities to have his way with unsuspecting women, and in volume 2 of the series, he takes his lack of morality to new levels. When Martians invade the Earth, he realizes that there is no way for humanity to win the War of the Worlds, and decides to save his own skin by making a deal with the invaders to betray humanity in exchange for being allowed to rule the planet alongside them. He also attacks his teammate Mina Murray, thus earning the ire of another of his teammates, Edward Hyde. In the League universe, Edward Hyde is kind of similar to the Hulk, being incredibly strong and about 3 times his usual size. So, in issue 5 of volume 2, he decided to use his size to his advantage, beating and pinning down the Invisible Man. He then spent hours brutally, well, you know, over and over until the Invisible Man died. His remains becoming visible only once he had fully expired after hours of pain and humiliation at Hyde's hands. Number 3. Batman Who Laughs Super Brutal Murder. When the Joker of Earth-22 found out that he was dying, he decided to go on one last spree in an attempt to send Batman over the edge. He took out all of the other supervillains in Gotham, as well as Jim Gordon. He blew up several buildings and captured Batman. He forced the Dark Knight to watch as he ended the lives of the parents of kidnapped children in front of them before infecting them with the Joker toxin. In order to stop the madness, Batman broke free and broke the Clown Prince's neck. When he did this, Batman was inadvertently exposed to a Joker toxin, which corrupted his mind and gave him the Joker's sick and twisted sense of humor and murderous desires. This Batman went on to kill the Bat family, as well as the entire Justice League, before using his his evil cunning to take over and destroy his world. His methods of taking out his former teammates were all awful, but the most despicable of them has to be how he took out Superman and his family. He brought Superman, his son John, and Lois Lane together, and then exposed Clark and John to black kryptonite. This particular strain of kryptonite drives Kryptonians insane, and as a result, Clark and John ripped Lois apart before attacking each other, as the Batman Who Laughs watched their cruel and messy demise. Number 2. Anything involving the Spectre. The spirit of vengeance in the DC universe first appeared in More Fun Comics number 52. He was originally a demon named Abbatoir, who was helping Lucifer try and take control of heaven. He eventually had a change of heart and surrendered to the Archangel Michael. As a means of atonement, his memory and consciousness were wiped, and he was transformed into the Spectre. He is divinely powered, being capable of almost anything he can imagine, can travel between dimensions, and can shoot energy blasts. He's immortal and capable of flight, intangibility, possession, telepathy, and telekinesis, just to name a few of his powers. In order to temper this power, he must be bonded to a human host, with this most often being Jim Corrigan. Spectre has no limit to his power, but is bound by the morality of his host, who often prevents him from unleashing the full wrath of God upon his enemies. He is known for subjecting his victims to fates worse than death, before eventually subjecting them to death as well. Over his years in the comics, he has used some strange and disturbing methods to dispatch his enemies, such as aging them to death, melting them, cutting them in half with a giant pair of scissors, turning a man into a sentient and feeling mannequin who is then dumped in a fire and painfully burnt, turning a bunch of junkies into his fingertips and then injecting them with liquid fire, or in one extreme case, burning down an entire country. Number 1. The Omega Sanction. The villain Darkseid is perhaps the most evil being in the DC universe, being a frequent foe of the Justice League. Sure, he might destroy you with his incredible strength, or even with the use of his Omega beams, which are essentially deadly energy beams that always find their target, usually reducing the victim to ash. That's bad, but it could be worse. If Darkseid instead used the Omega Sanction. The Omega Sanction traps you in an endless series of lives, each one more painful and awful than the last. So, you don't just die a horrible death, you die horrible death after horrible death without respite forever. It doesn't get much worse than that. Any other DC deaths that we didn't mention here? Check out part 1 of this video and maybe you'll see them there. Any other list ideas? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.